Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul and Justin Baker joining me for the start of the show. It's a new phenomenon. I did it once. I thought about doing it today and then I sent a long text message instead.
I just have to rewind here really quick because right before our video started recording, for those who don't know, we get a little countdown. It says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we record. And you literally, the minute the countdown went, you're like 5 seconds is too long, and it took every ounce of me not to say that's what she said. I don't know why. The Office.
I don't get it.
It's been. You don't get it. That's fine. Good. I'm glad you don't.
I like that Office commercial that's out. That AT&T commercial with a bunch of people from The Office.
Oh
You seen
yeah.
that? And I was like, I was never much of an Office person. Like, I can appreciate it. I've seen some episodes I think are really funny. I just never got super into it. And
Don't tell my wife.
any relationship that I've been in, the other person was like, I think this is dumb. You kind of end up in like if I'm watching TV, usually I'm with that person. So if they really don't like something, I'm probably not going to watch it with them. So then it's what time. I don't know about you, but what time do you have to sit down and watch a whole bunch of episodes of a show by yourself?
Dude, never.
Never. Especially once you have kids. But even before that, it was like, I can't very well just go and I have a friend, I'm in the basement watching this show. My wife's upstairs watching her show. I'm like, fine, it works for them. But for me, I'm like, that just seems like a waste of time. At least you can be sitting next to the person, I don't know, getting a little bit of rubbing a foot or something.
Dude, my wife, she'll do this if I want to watch a show that she doesn't like, right? For example, I don't know, Fallout or Jack Reacher, right, on Prime.
Are those she likes those shows? Or
she hates them. Yeah. Yeah, so if I'm trying to watch something like that she just despises, she'll whip out the Audible, the books, and start reading the Kindle. And so, yeah, it's great. So we still get to chill, hang out, and get a little rub. So
it was like it was like the very beginning of The Boys.
Oh, yeah.
The very first episode where that chick gets hit with the bus. I was like, yeah, let's try the show. It looks really cool. And we watched that and she's, I'm out. I can't do this.
Oh. Dude, such a good show.
It is. On today's show, on this show, we're going to talk some Four Nations because it has been a spectacular exhibition tournament. One of the best, I think, in a very long time. It's getting great ratings. And we have our predicted final USA-Canada rematch of the round-robin game. And I want to just, before we jump into the championship, give me your thoughts on the tournament itself. Because I was very skeptic. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it. And then the second it turned on, I think we talked, was our episode like the night before, maybe the first game? And then when I sat down and watched that game, I was just on pins and needles. Canada, Sweden. I was all in.
Yeah. As much of a USA fan as I am, I was just excited to watch Crosby and McKinnon and McDavid together, right? And see what kind of magic they shoot. I think I texted you. I was just like, F me the minute that power play.
9 seconds in or something.
Dude, Crosby with that backhand pass. I'm like, forget about it. This is what we're in store for. Now, unfortunately, the power play hasn't lived up to all the hype that I expected it to be, but
they haven't gotten that many opportunities on the power play.
No, and let's face it, really, right? You've got
exhibition.
Yeah, and you've got a bunch of guys who are passers, who are playmakers, right? You don't have, I hate to say it, Canada doesn't have a lot of guys that I would consider shooters in the traditional sense.
Maybe at their top skill is
no Steven Stamkoses, no Alex Ovechkins, right? Where you just look at them, you're like, that's a goal scorer. Yeah, I could see why the power play maybe would
have been on this team had he played a little better.
Yeah, maybe. But
you think he should have made this team? You think he should have made it?
And Stamkos?
No, you wouldn't put him in there.
No, I don't think I would have put Seth Jarvis in.
See, that's the thing. Should Stamkos have made the team over Seth Jarvis?
Mm.
At least Jarvis served a purpose of killing penalties.
That he did. But regardless, I think to answer your question, I think it lived up to exactly what I thought it was going to be. But I will say that US-Canada game, I did not expect that kind of intensity right off the draw.
Right off the bat.
9 seconds. Just.
And I love, it was straight Bash Brothers. Like,
Dude.
Matthew Tkachuk got in that fight, and the next face-off, Brady Tkachuk gets in that fight. And when he came back to the penalty box, it was true Bash Brothers. It was amazing, and it really made me hope that someday they actually play in a team together.
Dude.
It would be so fun. There might not be enough room on one team for both those guys over the course of an 82 game season.
That would be so much fun to watch. And I got to give it to JT Miller because listen, Colton Parenko is a beast of a man. He's a tall fella.
Right.
And Miller he's not the biggest guy. And he
was
held his
scrappy.
own.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was scrappy in there. I thought that when that first game, Finland, they held their own through the first 2 periods against the U.S., and then they fell apart a little bit. And then in the game against Canada, they went down big, and then they rallied at the end. So, like, they were able to – there was definitely enough skill on that team. They beat Sweden in overtime. There was enough skill on that team where it did make you go, oh, Finland? Like, Finland brought it a little bit. Like, they were definitely ready to – and I want to say it was Line who said, they're the little brothers now. Or
We're not
right?
the big, yeah.
Which it was one game and it went into overtime and you played 3-on-3. I don't think we're ready to say that Finland is necessarily the big brother now, but maybe they're like 2 middle brothers because the skill level, at least at the forward position, was very comparable. The D, Finland is still just doesn't have the high end that Sweden has, but
no, and maybe with a Heiskanen, right, playing the whole time, maybe it would have been a little different. And Saros, right? They went to Kevin Lankinen for those last 2 games. I imagine if Saros played the way we expect him to normally play and throw this year away, maybe it's a down year. And so next year in the Olympics, we get something different, but they could be a legit threat.
I'm wondering if, obviously we're looking at this tournament and we go, Sweden was the biggest disappointment. I'm like, horrifyingly disappointing for Sweden, basically just lost in overtime a bunch of times. And then, they go and they beat the U.S., but they beat the U.S. in a nothing burger game. They didn't play half their team. They let
no Matthews, no Kachucks.
Right. They let everybody rest, and they still barely beat them in a game where it was like, you better win this game because you've got some pride on the line, and they barely scratched past the U.S. in that one. So I look at Sweden and I go, man, that's a real disappointing showing. And I think we see a few differences in the Olympic team to this one because of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with the Olympics, especially because, again, we talk about it. You don't have to use just NHL players. You can pull prospects. Like there's a couple guys with the Red Wings from Sweden, ASP. He looks like a beast in the making, right? He's going to be something special, I think, for Detroit. So you could pull guys like that and maybe give that back end a little boost. But yeah, it was a little bit of a disappointment if I'm siding with you on this one. I think I am. So,
all right, championship game. Oh, obviously, it's fair to say that the U.S. had Canada's number in that first game. Canada went up 1-0, and then from then on, it was mostly U.S. Canada was missing Cale Makar. And that is it's like missing your throttle, right? Canada seemed to be in like first, second gear, stalling out. They couldn't move the puck nearly as well. He's going to come in. He's going to play 30 minutes. So in my mind, it's quite the different game because of how good he is. We're talking about top 5. We'll just say top 5 players in the world. Cale Makar.
He's up there.
He's up there. Top 10, whatever you like. Adding that guy back to the lineup and the fact that he's going to play half, the game's going to look different. Knowing that, what do you expect from Team USA and the outcome of this one?
Is Cale Makar playing, right? That's the big question, right? I haven't heard anything. I haven't read
until Thursday, and he missed because he was sick.
Right.
So
he did
I have to think he missed Saturday, and we're all the way to Thursday. If you can't figure out how to pump a guy full of IV 5 days after he's sick, I got to think that maybe something more is wrong. But
you can take this and look at it on the flip side too, right? And you can say, okay, USA doesn't have Quinn Hughes, who is now skating as an extra for Team USA. Unfortunately, because they didn't put him on the initial tournament roster to start the tournament, we've got to have another injury, which maybe USA pays somebody to smash Jake Sanderson's kneecap really quick, and then we see Quinn Hughes play. But yeah, I think with Cale Makar back there, I think it definitely adds another level, another dynamic that they definitely don't have on the back end.
Cale Makar played against Finland. I forgot.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Which I only saw highlights of that game because I didn't even realize that it was on at 1. What kind of game's on at 1?
I knew.
On
But
what?
unfortunately, I'm stuck working. I did not have President's Day off, so
I I thought that it was the U.S. Sweden game that was at 1 for some reason, and it wasn't.
that would have made more sense just
And then I
because.
went to watch that game. I turned it on and was like, "What? USA Sweden?" I was like, "Oh gosh, I hope Canada won."
See, it would
So
have made more sense to put Canada up at the prime time just because that game meant more, right?
it actually
Uh,
mattered. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But
Hard though to be like, "Hey, by the way, we're switching your game time to 1 instead of 8," because a lot of people that probably bought tickets worked. I don't know
exactly.
how they played that Canada one in. Was that one in Montreal or no? Or were they all in
No, it
Boston?
was in
They
Boston.
were all in Boston.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that makes sense then. Anyways, who do you think?
Anyways,
Tell me who you think's gonna win.
well, you know what? Regardless, Kale McCarr, if he's churning at 190%, whatever you want to call it, I still got to think the USA wins this one just because,
Mm,
one, Binnington, I just don't have faith in, right? Every single game of this tournament, he's let in a softie or two, right?
it's true.
So,
I just don't understand why they keep Cooper seems to be attached to the hip to Jordan Binnington, and I'm not sure why.
yeah, exactly. So I would like to see Aiden Hill in there, see what he can do. Right, he's got a Stanley Cup under his belt. He played well with Vegas when they did win. You know, I'd like to see him in there, but obviously, I think at this point it's just ride or die. But with Binnington, the way he's been playing, he hasn't been lights out, and I think the way Connor Hellebuyck's looked, he's been lights out. That's the difference for me right now. I think the USA's physicality is going to slow down the offense and the speediness of Cale McCarr, and I think, again, they're going to target guys like McDavid and McCarr and really lay the body to them. So I think they're going to slow down their kind of game that they like to play, that north-south, very quick game. But I do think, obviously, they're going to get their chances. And to me, that's when a guy like Connor Hellebuyck is going to be the difference maker.
Okay. Yeah, Hellebuck, certainly he was the difference maker in the first game. Like, and USA played really well, but when it was 1-0, Hellebuck made a couple really nice stops, and
Yeah.
suddenly you find yourself at 2-0 in that game. That's a tough road to claw back.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And for me, too, just looking at the forward group, I think obviously the advantage is for Canada for sure. But what I like, and as a Red Wings fan, I like seeing a guy like Dylan Larkin right now who's been slowly surging up that
Oh,
lineup.
he's looking good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he brings the speed, right? So he can match you. And I've been really, more than anybody else, I think, on this team, I've been more impressed with Jack Eichel's play. Just the way he plays at both ends of the ice. He's been back checking. It's been a phenomenal game to watch. It's a masterclass, in my opinion, how to play top end guys. The way he back checks, he forechecks, he plays the defensive
He
side
does
of the
that
puck.
for Vegas too. That's how he
Yeah,
plays. Like,
but it goes unnoticed because he's on the West Coast.
maybe one of the more underrated players in the NHL, Jack Eichel.
Yeah,
Because
and you got to
he's
kind of
not a guy who's usually leading the league in points. And although
right.
this year he's been up there at certain points, but typically he hasn't been. He's not winning trophies.
Yeah, and you got to think watching. Listen, when he came to Vegas, they had Mark Stone, so you got to think watching a guy like that only helps just boost his game a little bit over these last few years. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. There has been times where I look at this, I go, it's a gold medal game. It's Crosby. He has never not won a gold in anything he's ever done for Canada.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this is the way that they played against Finland, the way they came out. Now, of course, Finland stormed back. They made it a game.
mm-hmm.
But the way that they came out made me go, okay, no one is dicking around once it matters. And did that Team USA game matter? Of course. Was anybody not trying to win? No. But I think this game is going to be at a different level. I don't think that Canada is going to get sucked in to the fighting the way that they did. Oh, granted, I'm looking at it and I'm going, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, and JT Miller in exchange for what it was, Colton Parayko and
Brandon Hagel,
Brendan Hagel,
Sam Bennett, I
Bennett.
think. Yeah.
He's like, I'll take my 3 guys gone in exchange for those 3 guys being gone for Team USA for the first 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
So but I think that gave them so much life. They were just so jacked up. And I think that was the beginning of, okay, this game's going to be different. We're going to play the American way. And I think there needs to be, like, don't get sucked in to that the same way in this game. So we'll see how the beginning of the game starts. Again, I think with the return of Makar and the fact that it is very difficult to beat the same team twice, especially a high-powered. You think about two of the best teams in the league go up against each other. How often does one team just beat up on the other one? Not often. There's usually some back and forth. So I'm looking at it and I'm going, I think that Canada is going to be able to play chess with them a little more, and they'll find a way to win. Keep Crosby's streak alive.
Okay.
And no,
With
go
a
ahead.
guy like that though, I you could flip a coin with this game because again,
Sure.
guys like that they will teams to win. Crosby is that kind of guy, and there's a
Yep.
reason he's the captain, and I do think he will
Disney's
be.
got 3 Stanley Cups, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. Somebody asked me this question. They're like, "You're American, and you were Canadian, and so who are you cheering for now that you're American?" Because really, I haven't had to deal with this because the last time was 2016. I had just become an American, so I was like, I'm still just cheer for Canada. But now I'm rooted here. I'm American. So I said, here's what I've decided. I've decided that any team that still has Sidney Crosby on it is still a tie back to the olden days for me. So I will be rooting for the team with Sidney Crosby. But whenever Sidney Crosby hangs him up, if that is, I'm assuming he's going to stick around long enough to be the captain of the Olympic team, and then that will likely be his last year. Or there's no way he's making it to 2030 Olympics. At least if he's still playing at that point, then he's probably not making the Olympic team. I hope he proves me wrong, but I said once he's gone, then I'll switch over. I'll cheer for Team USA. So that's where I stand with that.
Okay. All right.
Should we jump into some rumors?
Yeah. Let's talk.
Um, Elias Pettersson. Any chance he gets dealt?
Nah,
No,
I
no
can't see
chance.
it. Right. The only chance I could see him getting dealt, and maybe you could put this at 5%, is if a team throws out an offer that's just far too good to be turned away. And when I say that too, that also has to come with a combination of some other things. I think Vancouver's got to start tanking, not on purpose. They just start losing a bunch of games. Maybe they go 3-7-1 over
Yeah.
their next 11 games, whatever, and they just drop in the standings, and it's okay. The season's over with, and then a team comes over and says, "Hey, you know what? Your season's over with. You probably want to move a few players. We're interested in Elias Pettersson. Here, we're going to give you this grade A prospect, 3 first-round picks, whatever, just something too good to turn away." And then maybe they're like, you know what? Demko hasn't looked great. We don't know what his health is going to be like moving forward. So maybe it's time to hit reset really quick and just reload the cupboards and get a couple new guys in here and maybe sign Mikko Rantanen in the offseason, give him $15 million, and then we can do a quick reload. I don't know.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rantanen's name's being tossed around all over the place. And before Four Nations, we talked about him a lot. And yeah, things aren't working out so far, which, I mean, we're like 7 games into him being with the Carolina Hurricanes. So
Yeah, I think
we
8,
can
but
we can write that off as a guy just getting used to his new space and getting over the shock of being traded from the team that you've been with your whole entire career. And once the Four Nations started and you saw the way that he was playing for Finland, you have to have said, all right, obviously there's nothing wrong with him. Because he has played very well. He looks really good. And I mean, if Carolina can't sign him and they can't figure out a place for him, it would be a damn shame. Now, Rod Brindamore, maybe you're looking at a scenario where he's just such a different type of coach, and maybe Rantanen's just not going to respond to that. In which case, maybe you do have to cut bait here before the deadline comes, because if can you really afford to lose all that for nothing on a run with a guy who maybe doesn't want to be there at all? I don't
well,
know.
that's the thing, right? You have to look at this because I would obviously they bring in a new GM this year, so you're not going to go out and you're not going to fire your GM if a guy like Mikko
No.
Rantanen doesn't sign. But I would wholeheartedly go back and look at, and I don't know what his contract is. I know he signed a multi-year extension back in May last year or something like that. But I would absolutely go back and take a harder look at Rod Brindamore. And I know he's well respected. He's been phenomenal in Carolina. Basically, he's getting gallons of lemon juice out of one lemon with the players he has. It's ridiculous. You got to look at and say, what is this the system that is really going to succeed in the NHL? Because Carolina, year in and year out, they get into the playoffs. Maybe they win a round. And when they get in that second round, that conference championship, the scoring dries up and then they just shrivel up like,
Yeah, I will say this. Maybe he would be better served with a team that's willing to spend. Would he have
or that.
some different talent around them if they had been willing to keep some guys that they let go? That is probably the bigger issue in Carolina, which, I mean, nothing he can do about an owner that doesn't want to sign guys. But what if Dougie Hamilton was still on this team? What if, I suppose they were able to go out and bring Orlov in, but Orlov
He's
is a
not a
defensive
Dougie Hamilton.
specialist. He's definitely not a Dougie Hamilton. They lose Brady Shea. There's just all sorts of players that they have just let walk, which sometimes that's a good thing. You don't want to have someone who just re-signs everyone every year. We've definitely seen that before. Thanks, you had a nice year last year. Let's re-sign you to even more when it's pretty clear that whatever that window is closing. Carolina is a fascinating one because they're always there, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to miss the playoffs. They're deeply entrenched. They will likely win a round. I think, looking at the way that New Jersey's been playing, they had a much better start than they've been having. And I think Carolina, to me, between those two teams, they're the favorite if they're playing in the first round. But beyond that, I don't see this team as a Stanley Cup contender, and they've been really good for a long time, but they've never been beyond the, if everything goes right, they could make the finals. That's not where you want to be. Although maybe it is. I guess it's better than being the Senators or the Sabres. That's a better place to be. Speaking of the Buffalo Sabres, they're always love going through a team's roster when they're struggling because that is the perfect team to go and grab some players from who are going to become UFAs. And there are a few. We've talked Jason Zucker a little bit, Jordan Greenway. Any chance that, I know Dylan Cousins has been on the map. I actually wonder if Dylan Cousins even gets dealt at all. I think if I'm the Sabres, I'm going, what can we do with Tage Thompson right now?
Ooh.
That's the guy. That's the guy you want to truly shake up everything. I know he's your best player, but it's just still not working out. Might as well go and really shake things up. And he does have a modified no trade clause that kicks in next year. So you could technically deal him now. And you'd be dealing at a high point. He's still a point per game player. I know he's not going to get dealt, but that's where I'm looking. You got to deal someone who just is worth something. Whereas Dylan Cousins to me is more like he's got solid potential. Like he's doing well enough. We're still looking at a guy who ultimately is like a 40-point player. What's that actually going to fetch you? Maybe a team thinks he could be a 60-point player, but Tage Thompson could be a 100-point player. I think he has been, right? Didn't he get 100? No, 94. Well, 94 in 78 games. So he was on almost a 100-point pace that year and 47 goals. So Tage Thompson, and I know you're not like, yes, let's get rid of our best player. But he's the one who's going to fetch you a ton. He's also 27. So whereas Cousins is 24, maybe Cousins can take a next step for you and improve there in Buffalo with a better team around him. But I guess if you dealt Tage Thompson, it would be like another Jack Eichel being dealt, and that would be a blow as well.
Well, that's when you're basically saying, okay, we're rebuilding, right? We're restarting.
How are they doing? That's what.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't even know why they brought in Lindy Ruff. I know why they brought in Lindy Ruff, but it was a stupid idea. It clearly hasn't worked out. But so you've got Rasmus Dahlin, 24, Owen Power, 22. You've got these young guys where if you had to rebuild, if you had to retool, refresh, whatever you want to call it, they've still got a good 3-4 years to where you can try to fix the situation. So for a guy like Tage Thompson, really his window, he's only got 3-4 years left. I think the way he plays hockey is rough as hard as he goes sometimes, where I think you've got to have a good shot at it here in the next few seasons.
And they're not going to.
No, they're not. Absolutely not. But if you're trying to shake things up and maybe try to get a better return other than a guy like Dylan Cousins. I look at a guy like Alex Tuck, who is 28. He's got a 5-team no trade clause. So there, yeah, you can pretty much trade him wherever you want.
Yeah.
And if you go into the deadline and you dangle a player like that, who I think any team in the NHL would love to have in their top 6 come playoff time, because of the
juicy playoff performer. Yeah.
Yes. And he scores goals. He's physical. That to me is a guy who can easily get you a first round plus in return. So you could easily make that into a, whatever you want to call it, a nice little bounty for your team, and to really kickstart whatever kind of refresh you want to have in Buffalo.
Yeah, refresh. They just have never they've never finished rebuilding.
I know.
It's been terrible. There's been a rumor out there about John Tavares that following the Four Nations or sometime before the trade deadline, that he's ready to sign a 3-year, $7 million per season contract. So basically,
Ooh.
3 years, $21 million, 3 times 7. I'll give my thoughts, but I want to hear what you think first.
So first time hearing that. Okay, let's just assume he signs at that number. They have $31-ish million in cap space next year. You take that money, right? Subtract 7. Now you've got roughly $24 million in cap space. You've got to sign Mitch Marner, right? You can easily get that done. But now when you sign Marner to 12 to 14 million bucks, whatever that discount you're going to try to convince him to give you, is that enough to really?
And after Four Nations, I think you're looking at him going, bro, like, it's hard to look at him and be like, yeah, you're obviously on the same plane as these other $14 million guys, because he's just not. Like, he's slow. You talked about Larkin and how it's been fun to see him move his way up the lineup. Marner's playing with Hagel now. He's found his way down the lineup because he just hasn't been like now. And some of that you could say it's because he's playing with somebody who also is a passer. Like, they needed to find somebody who could shoot the puck, and that's fair. But he did look a little out of place on a line with McDavid. So.
Yeah, and who knows, right? I don't really read into that too much as far as chemistry and guys, but yeah, I do think there is something to be said about not putting him with a goal scorer, because look, he's played mostly his entire career with Austin Matthews, who puts the puck in the back of the net. So you're gonna reap the reward.
It was basically Babcock who was like, "No, you're not playing together. I'm not playing them together. Not doing it."
Yeah,
Martin, you're playing on the 4th line, you bitch. Give me your phone.
But here's the thing with Tavares, right? He's 34 years old. Do I think he's still got some good hockey in front of him? I do. Is it $7 million worth? Maybe, right? If you can get 60 points out of this guy.
He's got 45 in 48 games so far. So you're looking at about a 70-point season.
Right. And I think, again, even if you can get 60-plus points out of this guy, the contract looks good. Again, I worry about their inability, again, to bring in other guys, right? Because they've kind of hamstringed themselves into, I don't want to say committing to Matthews, to Nylander, to Marner, but, how do you replace those guys? You can't go out there and get equal talent if you move them, or if you try to go find somebody else in free agency. So you're almost hamstringed into signing these guys anyways to ridiculous contracts. And then it leaves you a little light in the pocketbook to go sign depth guys. And I think bringing in a guy like John Tavares does that too. I'd rather them spend the money on, I know it's difficult to find good centermen, but I'd rather them maybe give him a 1-year, $7 million contract.
Even like
8.
1 times 9, just to be like, we'll give you the bigger contract. But yeah, here's my issue. No contract should be signed this year. None.
Okay.
Like, how can you sign him? And then let's say they go into the playoffs and God forbid they lose in the first round again. You seriously want to bring him back again after not only complete and utter failures in Toronto, but also in New York before that?
Even if Toronto loses in that first round and they have that contract signed and he even looks good in the playoffs and maybe is their only good player, that contract is still hard to move if you want to try to shake up the roster, right? So,
well, and that's the thing, is that at that point, I think you have to go, this is not going to work. This will never work. We have to, and he's the one who you could get rid of. And here's a dream scenario, but it is possible if you don't bring Tavares back. Let's say you sign Marner And the reason that you convince Marner to come back is because Rantanen's coming too. And now you have the money to move things around a little bit. I don't know. Probably not, but that's definitely Leafs talk there. Another guy is Nicholas Ehlers. He's a UFA at the end of the year too.
Yeah.
He may be the least talked about UFA so far, but here's a guy who just consistently puts up 60, 70 points every year. 60 points last year.
Yep.
He's a little injury prone, but generally relatively close to that point per game spot. Usually scores 20 plus goals. Like, he is going to be somebody who is very desired, and he's coming up as well. Not going to catch the money that some of these other guys are getting, but the Jets obviously not dealing him in the position that they're in, but somebody to keep an eye out for as well in the offseason. Any other rumors? Anything with Detroit?
Yeah. The one big thing I think with Detroit that we've been hearing prior to the break has been Vladimir Tarasenko's name. He's been floating around there. I think obviously he hasn't got as much ice time as maybe he would like, and I think his production hasn't been where Detroit would like it to be either. I just don't think that marriage has really worked out, I think, the way we all saw it, even with either coach, right? I just don't think it's looked good. I don't think he's a long-term solution. I know he's only got one more year on his deal, but I think this might be a situation where he's just better suited with another team that could use him this year and next year for a couple playoff runs and give Detroit an opportunity to bring in some of these younger guys who are better served up in the NHL than they have been right now down in the minors. I'm looking at guys like Nate Danielson, maybe even who we've seen recently with Elmer Soderblom. He's looked phenomenal.
He got called up, actually.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is give some of these younger guys a shot, and I think for Detroit, right, if they want to tell their fans we're in the thick of things, hey, you know what, we're going to reward the success you've had lately, considering that assuming that they keep up this kind of success, you go out and you make a move and you bring in a nice little top 9 forward for this group, right? You don't maybe spend a first round pick, but you could bring in a guy like a Jack Roslovic if they're looking to move him because he's slowly gone down in that lineup since Rantanen came over. Again,
I'm looking at Grzelcyk. And if Matt Grzelcyk, Pittsburgh is going to be more than happy to deal him, I think. And now he may fetch a first round pick just because he's got the playoff pedigree. He's got a lot of experience, and he's a pretty recognizable top 4 defenseman. Probably going to fetch a first round pick, but could you package a couple seconds or something like that for him? A second and a third maybe, but I think he would be a great fit for Detroit because you look at that decor and nothing screams, oh, that guy is like, he's a tough defenseman. And that's the way I always felt about Matt Grzelcyk. He's got that Boston Bruins, of course, that's where he played for so long. He's got that Bruins attitude about him that I think he could really breathe some life into that Detroit roster. And I know Petry's on the IR. He would be a great guy to just, if you could sweep out Jeff Petry in some deal to open up cap space to allow you to do even more. I think Detroit, they don't need to go all in, but they really need to make the playoffs. Like,
yes,
not even from an NHL standpoint, from just a sports market standpoint. We're starting to see the Tigers and the Lions. I know the Pistons are bad, but you're really trying to fight for attention with people. And as soon as the Tigers start, if the Red Wings aren't good anymore, people stop going to your games and everyone's just in on the Tigers, right? So I think you got to give your fans something to get excited about and at least be right there at the end, and even better, make a first round matchup. I think that's very important to this team. You got to get the playoffs. It's been too long.
And I'm going to throw a name out there who I think you could get on the cheap, maybe a 3rd round pick or maybe a 3rd and 4th, whatever you want to call it, a couple mid-level, pieces, right? Little nostalgia factor, but who had 70 plus points last year, I think would come in, bring a little boost just because of that nostalgia factor, and that'd be Gus Nyquist. If you're moving out a guy like Tarasenko, right? Now you pair him. Now he actually gets a centerman where you could throw in JT Compher or Andrew Kopp with him on that 3rd line. And now he's got a decent center to play with.
I like it.
Yeah. And then you get a little excitement from the fans who remember him from the glory days here with Tim Thomas Tatar. And
Yeah.
And maybe for him too, right? He gets a little boost coming back to Detroit, and maybe he just turns it up a little bit, right?
Yeah. And with Tarasenko, there has been rumors. Of course, Toronto's in on every rumor, but because Berube, he had some of his best years with Greg
Mm,
Berube and won a Stanley Cup with him, that Berube may be asking or has targeted Tarasenko as a guy that he would like to bring in to put in his bottom six.
okay.
And then,
I
have come play maybe on the I I just can't. I don't know that he would find a place on the power play very often. Maybe the second power play unit, but
You could, but I think if you're Toronto, you're gonna want to discount. You're not gonna want to take that whole
no.
salary over here. So that might cost you a couple pieces that maybe I don't know if Toronto might be willing to dish
I
out at
just
this
don't.
point. But maybe Detroit's just willing to give them away for free because they want to use that cap
Yeah,
space for other things next year.
true.
So
Now he does have a no trade clause, so he can tell you where he wants to go completely.
very
So
true.
if he picks one team, he wants to go back to St. Louis, he's going there, or maybe he wants to go back to Florida. Who knows? He did. He had a pretty nice run. Now Florida. Did they go to the finals? Was it the year that they went to the finals?
Mhm.
Oh, it was last year.
Yeah, he won a Stanley
He
Cup
won
with them.
again. Yeah.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember
he
if
and
it was
Kyle
last year or the
Okposo, and
year after. That's
And I
right.
will say, when he was in Florida, he looked good because he understood his role in that third line with Florida. He understood he was going to be more checking forward and not necessarily a goal scorer like he was. And so he would chip in offense every once in a while, but he played that third line grinder defensive style, I think, a little bit better than I thought he would have going into that system. So maybe
Yeah.
he goes back there.
He just hasn't looked right with Detroit and just never found a fit, which is unfortunate. I thought that he would be able to provide some scoring from that bottom six a little more, and he just hasn't. He may be the kind of guy, like, he's got to play in the top six or he's just not going to be able to do much.
That could be. And let's face it, too, that depth at the center position Florida has is a lot better than what Detroit has right now.
Which is maybe
Lundell,
why he would play pretty well in Toronto, because,
yeah, maybe
and which down the
pair
lineup,
him with Max Domi, maybe.
past Matthews and Tavares, there's not much of the center position with that
You
team.
could throw him with Max Domi. I would like to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. He's maybe you think Tarasenko's just like he's lost a little bit of a step too this year? Or
Let's face it, he's a very passionate hockey player, and I think maybe just losing it took a little steam out of him. And again, he's just coming into a system now where he has to be a little bit more responsible defensively because let's face it, Detroit doesn't have
which
the
is where
greatest
he
of back
came from
ends.
in St. Louis and had to be very
Yeah,
responsible defensive.
he knew how to be responsible, but he wasn't expected to be the responsible player, right? He could go
True.
out he could go out and just score and let
Yeah.
Ryan O'Reilly or Robert Thomas deal with that. And so now he has to be that guy. And maybe he just hasn't risen to the occasion. I don't know.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Go USA.
All right, let's. I want to see overtime. Give me another golden goal.
Oh no.
A golden goal.
My heart can't take that anymore. I can't.
That'll be the best. And then you get 5-on-5 nonstop overtime for all of eternity until it. That's what I'll root for that, and also rooting for Crosby to keep his gold medal alive. You can follow us on social media at OT Hockey Talk, wherever you can find us, and subscribe to the show. Justin, enjoy that game on Thursday, and to you, our listeners, thanks for being here, and enjoy the gold medal game.